This episode and every episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show is brought to you by Ironmonger Brewing. Visit Ironmonger at their taproom in Marietta, Georgia, or online at ironmongerbrewing.com.
Open up a tab, grab a seat, and pour a pint. It's time for the Beer Guys Radio Show.
You want free beer? Go to the brewery.
Dedicated to the art, science, and enjoyment of craft beer.
Yo, what's wrong with the beer we got?
Now, here are your hosts, Tim Dennis and Brian Hewitt.
Welcome to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We're broadcasting from the Beer Guys Radio Studios in Marietta, Georgia. And this week, we're talking with Crooked Run Brewing. I'm Tim Dennis, and with me, as always, is my good friend and co-host, Brian Hewitt.
Hey, Tim. So joining us today, we have Jake Endres. He's a co-owner of Crooked Run Brewing. We're going to talk about native culture beers, low-intervention wine, light lagers, and probably a lot more than that. Jake, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Jake, you told us the story just before we got on the air. It's the conditions are a little hairy up your way right now, right?
Yeah, we got our first snow of the year, which is always a challenge for the DC metro area. So
fun stuff.
It's melted now, but there's still a bit around. And unfortunately, it delayed the beer that I was sending to you guys.
Yes, yeah, that's it. We have beer on the way, but between the delays in typical shipping now and the weather, we'll have it soon. We'll make sure to shout it out when we get it here, Jake. So. We appreciate you sending it to us there.
I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely, Brian.
What did you get into this week, Tim?
Brian, I did a few things. So last weekend, we actually went out to a new-to-us brewery. It's an existing brewery, but a new location. Red Hare opened a distillery on the square here in Marietta where we're located, and they've got a Cuban restaurant in there. So, of course, we went down there and checked that out, had some cocktails and some Cuban food.
As you do.
Good stuff. Yep. Always a good time. I had a meeting with our friends at the Nest talking about some future stuff we're going to do. So I got to enjoy beer from, I believe it's Wild Leap and Bottle Share. The charity that we've talked about that supports people in the beer industry called Gratuity.
Yeah.
And it's a real light, easy drinking beer. Dropped by Burnt Hickory Brewery. Visited with Scott Hadeen over there. They've just revamped their tap room. They've got a lot of new beers on, and he's doing some experiments with hops where he's taking the base beer of Digits, which is their blood orange IPA, and he's taking it before they put the hopping or the orange in it and using different hops in there. So they're getting to experiment with some of that. So that's kind of my week, Brian. That's what I got up to.
That was pretty eventful. I was going to say, aside from
what you got, Brian?
The visit to that Red Hare distilling location, I just got into my cellar, honestly. We did have a few things here in the studio that, the Variant Dark adaptation.
Adaptation.
Yeah, that
nice
was really
style.
tasty.
Yeah.
Got into my cellar. It was kind of 50-50. I had the Sunday Morning Stout from 2015, which is still wonderful, even though the bottle says you were supposed to drink it by 2017. Still thought it was delicious. It's a crying shame. It's criminal that it's not still being made. I miss it every day.
That's when they said they weren't going to make any more, right?
Yeah, I think
not like they were skipping a year. They said we're not doing this anymore. I think
they were going to dedicate the resources to making different variants, like the Sunday Mole Stout. None of them are as good. They should just bring that back. And I don't have to drink old ones from my cellar. And I got into an Against the Grain 35K, which was probably about 2017, not meant to be aged that long. It was a milk stout. It's about 7%. I thought it was bigger than that, so it didn't hold up as well.
Didn't hold up.
But
I know having that fresh, that was tasty.
It was really good fresh.
Yeah.
I think I had planned to drink that in a 70K in one session, but no, that's
not happening.
I didn't do that because, well, that would be irresponsible. So,
it would be irresponsible, Brian, but that's never really stopped you before.
Yeah, it never has, but I think it's time for us to get into the beers of the week, Tim.
Now it's time for our Beers of the Week. Brought to you by The Nest, craft beer and barbecue in downtown Kennesaw, Georgia. TheNestKennesaw.com.
Brian, as always, we have a great list of beers to get into this week, and we want to say thank you to our friends at The Nest for sponsoring this segment. We really appreciate it. Brian, I have some exciting news for you.
Okay.
They're going to have smoked gators there when they do their anniversary, the end of February.
Oh, nice.
So they're going to have whole smoked gator for us again there, so we'll have to go check it out. Put that on your calendars. You've never experienced something quite like whole smoked alligator.
You really haven't. It's quite something to see, too.
It is.
Yeah,
it's
you
a
get
spectacle.
to actually see the smoke. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Brian, on the beer list here, we actually pre-gamed with one from Southern Grist Brewing called, I'm assuming the pronunciation is Batida, and that is inspired by the Brazilian cocktail.
Yes.
Very tasty beer, sour beer there. We have one from our friends at Weld Works, French Toast Stout, which I'm sure is good. We really enjoy their stuff. Brian, so, this is flagship February. So we've made way from dry January into flagship February. And I guess this counts as a flagship. I think normally flagships, they look at American breweries.
Yeah.
But we have some Dre Fontaine and Oud Goose here, which I guess
think it counts.
definitely flagship. And an Ommegang 3 Philosophers, which definitely
counts.
is a
I'm on
flagship
board.
there.
I welcome the transition from dry January to very, very moist and flagshipy
moist
February.
February. Jake, do you have flagship beers there at Crooked Run?
Yeah, we actually have 3, which is a lot for a 10-barrel brewery. Yeah, we have a New Zealand Pils, hazy IPA, and a raspberry sour IPA.
Okay. Interesting flagships there.
Yeah.
With the raspberry sour IPA, but I guess we've got a brewery here that has a pink guava sour.
Oh, yeah,
That I guess you would consider a flagship from them. That's always out year round there.
Exactly.
So it's a tasty beer.
Definitely
That's
worth
what it is. Brian,
worth
what's
drinking.
talking of flagship beers, what's one of your favorites?
Oh, boy. I immediately thought of the local one, Southbound Mountain Jam. I really like that.
Okay.
I think that's a flagship of theirs. I thought that was wonderful. A lot of the ones that are local. I mean, obviously the Drew Fontaine. When you pulled that out, I'm like, that's absolutely flagship
This will work,
beer.
right? Yeah.
Obviously one of my favorites. Boy, I don't know. There's so many good ones out there. I'm trying to think of a good one off the top of my head that's, has wide appeal.
Did I put you on the
kind
spot
of did.
there?
Yeah.
I
How about you,
apologize.
Tim? What about you?
I tell you what, man, digging here from the backyard, Sweetwater 420 is a great one. That's Atlanta. That's Georgia's beer. Big flagship there. Sierra Nevada Pale Ale.
There you
is,
go.
is always a classic that you go to there. Jake, how about you? When you're not drinking Crooked Run beers, what do you reach for?
I really like a lot of Pilsners. Honestly, Radaburger and Eggenberger are like 2 of my go-tos because a lot of bars that in our area happen to carry both of those, and it's just an easy first choice. Otherwise, for beer in the area, I think at least a couple of years ago, they were the most award-winning brewery at GABF, most award-winning small brewery, but Port City makes a lot of really, really good classic styles. I'm a big fan of theirs. Their Pilsner, their Wit, other beers like that. But yeah, those are the beers I kind of go to because usually I'm out and about. Or pre-COVID I was and at an event and got to drive home at some point. So
can't argue with that, man. We're all about some good Pilsners and lagers. Well, let's find out what's happening in the news.
What's in the news? The beer guys have the scoop.
Extra, extra, read all about it.
Time for headlines.
Big news in the beer delivery scene this week. Rideshare and food delivery service Uber is acquiring the Drizzly alcohol delivery service. The deal is expected to cost Uber $1.1 billion in stock and cash. My mind is blown by the
little
size
pinky
of that.
up like
$1
Dr.
billion.
Yeah.
And the deal will close in the first half of 2021. The plan is for the Drizzly app to remain independent, but also to have its services integrated into the Uber Eats app, which I think will keep everybody happy. As you might expect, Drizzly has done big business during the pandemic era. They grew about 350% over that time.
Wow. Yeah, makes sense.
We have an update on Ockel. We had a story last week saying it could happen, and according to the Bulletin in Belgium, it has happened. Ockel has lost their official Trappist designation because the last monk living there left Ockel, went to Westmalle, which is where they're actually brewing the Ockel beer. So he's going to be involved, but since they aren't actually living on site, it is no longer technically Trappist.
And they did say they're like, nothing is changing about the beer.
Yeah.
Ockel will still be Ockel. It just doesn't get that designation anymore.
Still brewed by monks, too, just not the right ones.
Yeah.
All right, so from the news that you already knew department, the Smithsonian says just a taste of beer can trigger a rush of chemical pleasure. So just tasting beer can give you pleasure, Tim. Did you know this?
Give me all that dopamine.
In the brain, the chemical pressure is happening in the brain. That's right, just a sip can knock off a flood of dopamine. So it happens so fast, you can actually have it happen measurably in your brain before it even hits your stomach.
Before the alcohol gets there. That's good stuff. You're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take a break. But we'll be back right after this.
Have you ever thought about owning your own brewery but don't know what it takes to get one built? We're Storytime Construction, and we build breweries. We're Georgia's most experienced and hands-on contractors when it comes to building new breweries and tap rooms, or expanding existing breweries. We offer full build-outs, remodeling, and additions, as well as consulting and construction management. Give us a call at 770-733-4343. Storytime Construction. We build breweries.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
What in tarnation?
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. Remember, all episodes are available on demand, so if you missed the broadcast, get the podcast. Beer Guys Radio is available on all popular and unpopular podcasting apps. Now let's get back to Crooked Run Brewing.
Jake Endres, Crooked Run Brewing, thank you so much again for joining us. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So can you tell us a little bit about how did Crooked Run get started?
Sure, yes. My partner Lee and I opened up Crooked Run almost 8 years ago when we were 25 and 26 with Kickstarter money. And at the time, I think we were the youngest brewery owners, at least in the state, if not the U.S. We opened up with about enough money to buy a car. I really would not advise anyone to do that.
Yeah, that's tough, right?
It was rough, but we kept at it, and then we opened up a larger facility in 2017, about 15 minutes away in Sterling, which is near Dulles Airport, outside DC. And since then, it's gone really well. Done a lot of stuff I think is really cool, and things I never thought I would see myself doing, and it's been great. And we added on a restaurant as well, and got more and more into doing the beers that we wanted to do.
So you mentioned that when you started out, you had about enough to buy a car. I've got to hear, what size system did you start out with?
Barrel and a half.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, it was stainless steel drums and electric heating elements. It wasn't like terrible.
Sure.
It wasn't anything that would put anyone at risk or anything, but it was not optimal.
Small and labor intensive, basically, is what I'm guessing.
Absolutely.
You said you're doing things you never imagined you'd be doing. What kind of things are those?
Yeah, well, we released our first Frambois style beer. I have to constantly remind myself to, say Frambois style or Frambois inspired.
Yeah, got to throw style in there. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, just to clarify, the terms Frambois, Lambic, Goose, all those things are protected regional terms like Parmesan or Champagne. So we follow all the guidelines, the method traditionnel guidelines that mirror the Horrell guidelines for Lambic. But yeah, we released 2 of those beers for Christmas, and we have our first Goose style beer coming up.
And I'm assuming that's part of your native culture project. Is that right?
That is right.
Do you do that as a total separate label? I think that's what I saw. It's kind of totally break it out from Crooked Run.
Kind of. I mean,
yeah.
The truth is, like, you don't really want to build a brand unless there's like a really good reason for it. Like it's a radically different product, or like you want to build it and sell it or something. We don't really want to do those things.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So it's more, I would say it's more of like a stamp or sub-brand. But
okay.
Yeah. So native culture in a nutshell is like, we do a lot of, contemporary beers like adjuncty stouts and other stuff. But under this native culture sub-brand for Crooked Run, we do beers that as much as possible use 100% Virginia malt, 100% Virginia fruit, and no commercially available yeast, either coolship or our own culture that we have, and soon Virginia aged hops as well.
Okay.
Oh,
are they growing a lot of hops in Virginia?
Not so much. There were enough people doing it. We just need them for aged hops for these like Lambic style beers. Yeah. So we got a bunch of those, and it won't be too much longer until it's 100% Virginia ingredients.
It's interesting to see hops popping up different places. You know, we've mentioned several times our friend here in Georgia, Yorkville Hops and Produce, and they're trying to get things going here in Georgia. They've got, I forget the size of it, but he's got a decent little hop farm over there. It's not massive.
Yeah.
But even down in Florida, you know, places where you never think of growing hops, they're giving it a shot, man. They're going
big
for
investments in that. Like I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, I got an article about how they were investing a bunch in. Didn't Wild Leap use some hydroponically grown?
They did from a place in Alabama.
Alabama,
I think.
yeah. It's just no place you would actually think of
interesting
being
stuff.
a hop source.
Yeah. Now, Jake, talking about these beers, and you kind of mentioned a few terms there, like coolship and the method traditional. It's interesting. We don't talk to a lot of brewers that have coolships. There's just not a lot of people using that type of thing. But the brewer we had on last week, Monday Night Brewing, they do the crunk ship, as they call it. They've got a neat little neon sign above the door that says crunk ship and everything. But a coolship, I tell you what, let's get your take on a coolship. What are the benefits of that, of doing a beer in a coolship?
The idea of a coolship, or the equipment, came out of necessity of just like, we use heat exchangers to cool beer, but obviously 200 years ago, they didn't have those. So you're pumping out your hot wort from the kettle, you're letting it cool via just air, and then you're putting it into your fermentation vessels. And that's basically all it is core. In terms of benefit, there's really nothing stopping you from maybe doing it once or twice and then taking the culture that you get from it and then using that to ferment other beers. And we have done that on some beers. We wouldn't call it a coolship beer at that point. The benefit to it is, at least for the first time you do it, you do get a sample of the ambient yeast and microbes in the air around your brewery. From that point onward, though, it's kind of just, to be honest, it's a little bit of a throwback because it would be easier to just culture that and keep using it. When you're continuously doing the coolship, you're continuously rolling the dice a little bit on what you're going to...
What's coming in there, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to put a little on the line just to show your cred.
That's right. Yeah. And the fortunate thing is that the more you do it, the less you end up losing because you start to get a little bit better at it and start to learn some things. But we were initially prepared to lose a lot of it, and we did. But now, at first we were losing about a third of it, and now we maybe lose less than a fifth.
So it sounds like, do you get to use the coolship very often? I think isn't that kind of a very isolated time of the year you can actually pull that
temperature-wise,
Yeah,
right?
temperature-wise.
Yeah, well, it kind of depends. It's getting all weird because of climate change. You do have certain months you want to use it because basically what you're doing is you're collecting, everything that's in the air, right? So the easiest way to put this is you want like a wide range of yeast and bacteria that you're getting. But if you do it just during the warm months, you're really self-selecting for wild Saccharomyces yeast, the same species that's used in regular beer brewing, which is fine. You want some of that, but if you're just selecting for that, it's going to dominate, and it's not going to create as complex a beer. If you do it in the dead of winter, there's nothing alive then. So there is this kind of window, but it's getting all wonky because we're not getting those colder months as early. In Virginia now, we have to wait longer, and then suddenly it goes to pretty cold. We have this snowstorm going on right now.
Quick, right?
But, yeah. But during that time period, we brew a lot. You got to make hay while the sun shines. So we just crank it out.
Yeah. And the bottom line with the coolship is it's cool. It's cool to brew with a coolship, right?
That's right.
Yeah. And I saw a video I think it was on your Instagram. It looked like you were maybe laying down some sliced citrus or dried citrus. Is that right?
Yeah. I think that's going to be pretty cool beer.
In the coolship itself?
Yeah. Layering it down in the coolship there.
Huh. Okay.
Now, was that just for flavor, or was that where you bringing microbes off the fruit as well?
We might bring a little bit. That was put in when it was still hot, but it's more kind of for flavor and add a little bit of bitterness without actually adding hops to it. Okay. That beer is, I wouldn't call it a braggot, but it's like majority honey. It's not majority honey. It's a lot of honey. And I think it's going to be pretty cool.
Is this a coolship mead that you got going there, Jake?
Yeah, something like
Almost.
it. Although I don't know very much about mead making. Theoretically, you probably wouldn't want to do a coolship mead just because like honey is not really yeast's like favorite thing to ferment, and when you make mead, you got to like use a lot of nutrients and coax it to make it work. And when you're doing coolship beers, you're selecting, you're not pulling a very high cell count out of the air. So, but in this case, we still had a fair amount of beer, you know, of malt, maltose-based sugar in there. So
you're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take a break, but we'll be back right after this. Brian and Tim, the Beer Guys. If you're like us, no lunch or dinner is complete without a pint or two of craft beer.
Which is why Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock, Alpharetta, and Duluth are always on our list. Tim, why do they call it Truck and Tap?
Well, the tap part is easy, Brian. They've got 18 of them.
As for the truck part, that's where it gets interesting. Truck and Tap features your favorite Atlanta area food trucks, so you're getting a different menu every day.
Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock, Alpharetta, and Duluth.
Truckandtap.com. Let them know that the Beer Guys sent you. Looking for great craft beer to enjoy at home? Get your beer to go at the Nest in Kennesaw, Georgia. Choose from their 48 taps to enjoy there with some tasty barbecue, and take some home with you for later. Grab a crispy Pilsner, a nice tart sour, or a bold stout to sit by the fire. Just bring your growler in and choose a favorite or two to take with you. It's our beer, your growler at the Nest for your brews to go. Check out the beer and food menus before you visit at thenestkennesaw.com.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Cannonball coming.
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. I want to give a quick shout out to one of our great radio affiliates, KCPX 1490 AM in Moab, Utah. Catch Beer Guys Radio on KCPX every Sunday at 3 p.m. Now let's get back to Crooked Run Brewing.
Jake, we would like to talk to you about light lagers, and we're going to tie into this a little bit. We didn't mention this earlier. I was going to mention it in the front part of the show, but there's a big football game this weekend.
Something's coming up.
There is the Super Bowl, which I think we can say in the show.
Yeah.
We just can't market with it.
Exactly.
So the big game, the Super Bowl, the Super Bowl. Jake, are you a football fan?
Not so much.
Okay. All right. Do you generally are you a fan of the Super Bowl or Super Bowl parties?
Yeah, well, for sure. But, you know, I mean, this year was COVID notwithstanding, like, exciting. Right. Like, so one of our brewers is from Buffalo, and then my partner is from Rochester. And, you know, I don't have that much of a dog in the fight now.
Sure.
But it was pretty great to see the Bills do that well. But we got the next best thing is a collab with Thin Man doing a light lager in a couple weeks now. So
there you go.
Do that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, that's a perfect beer for a Super Bowl party. Brian, who do you take in the Super Bowl? Because I know you watch those things.
Yes. Historically, I've liked them for the commercials, but I've enjoyed some of them. I think I'm going Tampa with that.
You know, I have to respect the fact that I don't follow football. I didn't even know Tom Brady played for Tampa until a game happened to be on TV like a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, isn't that Tom Brady in a Tampa jersey? So, but man, props to him. He took him to the Super Bowl.
He's about my age. I've got to root for the old man. I'm in for it. Yeah. That's my whole basis for having a choice in that.
Right.
Yeah.
This is just from SNL, but like they said Tom Brady's the only thing in this country that works. And I mean, you got to respect that.
I saw that as well. Yeah. Because at the end of it, I think they asked him a political question. And rather than answer it, he's like, well, thanks for having me on. And he darted out of there. So, yeah, good stuff, good stuff. Well, but, you know, talking of this, the Super Bowl parties, the Super Bowl, light lagers are a real popular beer for that. You mentioned to us earlier you will go for, you know, a lager, a Pilsner, and that. Do you guys brew a lot of lagers and light lagers there?
Yeah, we do. One of our year-round beers is a New Zealand style pils. It's not as much on the lighter side. It's all malted barley with a substantial dry hop, but we do a rotator lager once a month, and a lot of those are turning into some of these light lagers and stat mash lagers with kind of, lighter finish. And they're really popular, and they're not, for what it's worth, like, these beers used to have just abysmal untapped ratings, and they don't anymore, which is pretty cool.
That's good. So is lager in general, is it picking up more popularity in your area?
Yeah, without a doubt, man. And it has been for a couple of years. It's really a shame. There's many more worthwhile things to complain about during the pandemic, but we were selling a lot of glasses of lager in the tap room. And then when the pandemic hit, we had these plans. We're like, we're selling more and more traditional styles, old school styles, more lager. Let's do more of that in 2020. And then with COVID, we just had to kind of flip back to more adjuncty stouts and kettle sours and stuff, because that's what people wanted to take out of there in cans. They didn't want cans of light lager, but we'll get back to it for sure.
You need the comically large packs, like the ones that are about a football field long, but only has 2 cans wide. Start selling your light lagers in those. I forget who did that. Somebody did something like that. The 99 pack or something like
Austin Beer Works did a 99 pack.
Is that what that was?
But you're saying just put 2 cans
exactly.
in it?
Come up with interesting packaging. Just a large format
Why
to take
not
out.
99 cans in the 99 pack?
Well, there you go. Yeah, or Pabst Blue Ribbon, apparently.
Pabst did it.
A pyramid of beers. Like you package it up. Yeah, take
no one's done the pyramid. Are you writing this down, Jake?
Yeah.
Are you writing this down?
I am now.
I am a fountain of bad ideas. Please put them in practice. To go, I think people would be into it, but I think people are doing a lot of the, like you're saying, like the heavily adjunct and the very specialized IPAs. They're small packaging. I would like to take out just a big old flat of like drinking beers. Usually that's not an option. It's like we've got these 4-packs available. Well, you can't. You could take out the same number of them, but you'll bankrupt yourself buying them. So,
well, as it happens, we actually did 16-ounce can 6-packs of our light lagers. We did one not too long ago over the summer called Jimmy, which was kind of a showcase for Jimmy Red corn. It's like the bootlegger corn used during Prohibition to make moonshine. And Tex Malt out of Texas offered it as malted corn, which is pretty cool. So we used that to make a light lager, and we offered it in these 16-ounce 6-packs, which is just for fun, but it's a cool format.
It's perfect. Did you do that because you couldn't find can rings that would work for the 32-ounce growlers or the crowlers? Because that's what I'd like to see, like a 6-pack of 32-ounce growlers. Now we're talking. Now we're on board with Brian's plan.
He was talking 99 pack with 2 cans in it. Now he wants a 6-pack.
Now I want a 6-pack of 32-ounce growlers or 64s. I mean, if you can find them.
No more marketing for you.
Okay.
No more for you. Now talking about what people are taking home, we see seltzer moving a lot. And Jake, I think you guys do some pretty heavily fruited seltzers there, right?
We are just starting to on Friday. Yeah.
How are you said you're just starting as in like just now?
Yeah.
Okay, right on it, huh? All right.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty big this next year. Obviously, some people are familiar with Smooch coming from Rome.
Sure enough.
We're friends with their head brewer, and he sent us some, and we're like, oh, this is really good, and we should probably start doing something like this, which it's really interesting because it's very expensive to produce. You're using so much fruit puree in it that it just, the margins don't really work in distribution. So it's, even though it's hard seltzer, it's like probably the polar opposite of like, your White Claw or Truly or whatever.
Wasn't the whole point of seltzers to give folks a low-calorie alcoholic beverage to drink? What happened, Jake? Where did we go wrong?
Well, you know what? It's funny because I'm never not amazed at how much craft beer fans, how much they love sugar. And
that's the truth. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. We put more and more in beers, and so does everyone. There doesn't seem to be a limit on it. But Virginia at least requires you to put calorie counts on hard seltzer, and people are going to see the calorie count on this, and they're probably going to flip.
Well, yeast is our homeboy, so of course we like sugar. I mean, we're down with the yeast. So,
well, the thing is, this is unfermented sugar, so all these stouts and
cold drink fresh
and stuff. So alcohol has calories too, but most of the alcohol in a beer or other drink gets absorbed into your bloodstream, so you're not getting the calories necessary that each gram of alcohol has in it. But sugar, you absolutely are. And there's a lot of sugar in a lot of beer. And most beer doesn't, you're not required to put the nutrition facts on it unless you're over 60K barrels a year. And so, unfortunately, for most craft beer drinkers, they probably don't want to know this, but even just a 12 ouncer of your favorite pastry stout is probably 300, 400 calories.
Oh, yes. We looked at...
Oh, yes.
We actually looked up Black Tuesday,
that's
which is like
right.
19.3%.
Something like that,
year.
yeah.
But a 12-ounce pour of Black Tuesday is 567 calories.
I think the entire bottle is your entire daily
it's a day.
caloric
and
intake
then some, I think. Yeah.
For the day plus. Probably plus a little bit.
Yeah.
And it'll get you lit
Well, that
up,
wouldn't work out. That would like 1,200 calories, I think, maybe in a bottle.
Is it only 1,200?
Somewhere around there.
I thought it was close to 2,000 for the entire bottle.
I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, it's a lot.
Well, you're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take a break, but we'll be back right after this.
Craft beer forged with a reverence for tradition and new styles that start a revolution. Ironmonger Brewing. The brewers at Ironmonger Brewing pride themselves at being masters of barrel-aged, hoppy, and sour beers. They invite you to their tap room in Marietta, Georgia to taste and see. Also visit their barrel room for an intimate drinking experience with great live entertainment. Keep up to date on all things Ironmonger by liking them on Facebook. Ironmonger Brewing, establishing a new standard in craft beer.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Get them all coming.
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/beerguys. Patrons get cool perks like Beer Guys swag and commercial-free episodes. Now let's get back to Crooked Run Brewing.
Jake, we want to talk to you about something that we mentioned earlier in the show, so we definitely want to cover it, and I'm going to get into that in just a minute, but we're going to talk about low-intervention wines, Brian.
Oh, okay.
And we've talked here, Jake, about doing seltzer, doing wines, got a kind of a braggot thing going on. It sounds like you've got a pretty diverse portfolio of beverages. Do you think offering a good variety now, because we're seeing more breweries do that, is that important for a place to do that?
Yeah, I think it is. Well, it depends on your model, right? So we are heavily taproom focused, and as a result, we have a restaurant that does cocktails and brunch, and we noticed that when we have a place that can offer craft beer, cocktails, wine, food, it really draws in a much more diverse crowd. Like, Let's say you have a party of like 5, but like one person isn't really into beer, but there's like that one brewery they can go to where it's like, oh, I can have my rosé here. Like, I'm super happy about this. And once they're kind of in with that party of people, they really turn into repeat customers. I mean, they're just like, where else are you going to go? Because not a lot of breweries offer all those things. So it's funny you guys should mention that, because we have planned in the next year, we're doing a new logo, a new name. It's going to be Crooked Run Fermentation.
Sure. All right.
Yeah. And it's based on this whole multifaceted approach. And we're working on cider, sake. And with all these things, we only want to release stuff if it's actually good. We're just kind of tinkering around with stuff right now. But we're not just like trying to do everything at once. We'll just kind of have some fun on a small scale. And
as it comes along.
How it turns out. Yeah.
More and more brewers we talk to are saying that it's they're diverse. And to be honest, that's what a lot of them say about the seltzer is, hey, we offer seltzer because some people just don't drink beer. Actually, our studio, Jake, is inside of a brewery here, Ironmonger Brewing. And when this originally started, it was actually Naughty Soda. And they made hard sodas. And the brewery portion was to give people an option who didn't want to drink hard soda.
Drink a soda.
So it's just, but the beer took off more. So now it's, kind of reversed.
It is interesting how the most picky person in a given group kind of controls where the group goes.
They do.
Yeah.
You need new friends, man.
Yeah, exactly. Or ones that will expand the horizons, right? So,
yeah. Well, when I'm hanging out with you, Brian, I'm like, you want to go to this place that has beer? You're like, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's easy enough, right? Yeah.
But you haven't asked me if I want to go to this place that has seltzer. I'm like, I heard they have seltzer.
Yeah.
You haven't asked that question.
No. I know these things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, Jake, talking to the low intervention wine, something that I'm not familiar with, that term, or not really familiar with a lot about wine. What is a low intervention wine?
Yeah, sure. So a more familiar term might be natural wine, but low intervention wine is basically like messing with the wine as little as possible. So, minimal to no sulfite additions, using the yeast that's naturally on the grapes, and then organic if possible. Natural wine doesn't have a strict definition, but natural wine distributors typically want all organic wine. In Virginia, it's very hard to grow organic grapes. So we're not going to make natural wine, but we'll make low intervention wine.
What's the driving factor behind going the natural route versus like a more traditional route? What's the advantage there? I mean, it sounds kind of hip, but is that it really? Is that what it boils down to, or is it variety of flavor?
From my understanding, wine became very rigid during the 90s and aughts, with wine critics really dominating the discussion. And, I don't know if you guys have seen Sideways, Paul Giamatti screaming like, "We're not drinking Merlot." This idea of like wine just being this just really rigid thing. Like Cabernet has to be big and jammy, and a Chardonnay has to be oaky and a little bit buttery. And there's these characteristics that wine critics told everyone, wine should have. And then natural wine, low intervention wine is kind of just like, flavor should naturally develop on its own, and it might not be exactly what you want, but we make a lot of coolship beer, and that was appealing to us. And in terms of the flavor being more or less desirable, I think you got to make that call for yourself. But from my experience, older wine drinkers or just more experienced wine drinkers tend to not like natural wines as much because they can be radically different. I got my dad for Christmas a bottle of this wine that I really liked, which was like lighter red wine that had an aroma similar to vinyl upholstery and a flavor like cherry Gatorade and cranberry juice.
Okay. All right.
It's pretty wild.
Hold on, I'm on board now.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was pretty wild, but I thought it was delicious. Like, I thought it was like objectively delicious when I tried it. And I gave it to him, and I never heard anything. And I was like, "Hey, Dad, did you like that wine?" And he's like, "Yeah, it was something."
It was something.
It was certainly something.
Yeah, but like, you can try stuff that's really amazing that tastes totally different. One of my favorite wines I've had was this orange wine from this winery called Turpin, and it tastes like peach juice. It tastes like white wine with absolutely no tannic quality and just this juicy Brett flavor. And we have an orange wine coming out that has some of that same stuff going on, which I'm like super stoked about. So yeah, it can be radically different than traditional wine, but not in an offensive way. Just
if you like car upholstery and cherries, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know that sounded super weird, but like it tastes really good.
This wine has that new car smell.
Yes, yeah.
Yep. Who doesn't like that?
I was at a Wild Beer Fest a few years ago, and we did a little Facebook Live video, and the guy hosting it, I was like, "Can you tell us, what we've got here?" He's like, "We've got just a great selection of, wild and sour beers." He's like, "They're cheesy, feedy, funky," and he pauses and he's like, "If you don't know these beers and you give people these descriptors, they'd never want to drink these beers."
Yes.
And we've talked to brewers that do those that hate those terms because they do think it gives, a bad descriptor. But some of them, it really nails it. as to what that is. Yeah.
It's interesting that you say that, because actually a lot of those like Brett derived flavors are, I think, bad.
Gotcha.
I don't really want horse blanket in anything that I try.
Yeah.
But what we shoot for is like jammy Brett, which is like Brettanomyces yeast when it's not stressed out, when it's adequately treated, it gives you this like just really fruity flavor. And that I think is very accessible to people. And, you know, same goes with wine. You don't really want something that's like crazy, like funk leather going on. Some people might like it, but it's better to just keep it to like overripe pineapple, you know, and like light acidity and stuff like that. That's what most people dig. So that's what we're shooting for.
Do these type of wines, do they typically ferment for the same? Is a process similar to, you know, other wines outside of, you know, the addition of additives?
Yeah. So, you know, sulfites are used to like essentially clear the board of yeast before you add your own yeast. So you add your sulfites to your must, and then you add your yeast afterwards. And sometimes people will do a little bit of wild fermentation before they do their sulfite addition.
Okay.
Or sometimes it's 100% naturally fermented. If it's 100% naturally fermented, there's always going to be Brett and bacteria that are left over, and they will be present, and they may make their presence known through changing the flavor. But most of the fermentation is going to occur really rapidly, because your Saccharomyces yeast, the same yeast that's used in beer brewing, its favorite place is on the skin of grapes or other fruit or bark. So it's very naturally present. It's not like, you know, in other fermented beverages where it needs to be added. It's already there, and it will do the bulk of the work. And when it's done, there won't really be anything left for other spoilage bacteria to consume.
So you're not going to get any kind of bottle bombs out of these natural or low intervention wines.
Yeah, not unless you like bottle them early or something. But that won't happen.
I believe Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill is a low intervention wine. From what Mad Dog 2020. It's no intervention at all on that one.
Yeah,
people may get an intervention.
Exactly. That's high intervention causing wine.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Jake, if folks want to find out what is coming up from Crooked Run Brewing, what's the best way for them to do that?
I would follow us on Instagram for sure.
Easy enough. Go to IG, look for Crooked Run Brewing. Jake, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, guys. Brian, Tim, it's been a real pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show. Join us next week. We're taking a diversion.
Yes.
Bourbon talk, Brian.
Ooh,
we are Beer Guys Radio on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great week. And don't forget to drink local. Cheers.